Good morning, friends. Welcome to Coffee Talk. Welcome to just this chance just to hang out. We're here on this beautiful Okanagan Lake. We can't believe how amazing and calm and peaceful it is out here in the morning. There's just something about mornings, being on the water. It's just beautiful. I still can't believe I live here.
I know. I have to pinch myself once in a while too. So good.
But hopefully you're enjoying your summer. You're just connecting with people and enjoying the outside, and it's good to connect even Sunday mornings. We've been enjoying just being together in all that we do, and we finished off March.
Yeah, year and a half.
It was year and a half. Yeah, it's hard to believe. I mean, we did a couple of side steps in there. So we did a small series of Blessed to be a Blessing and Christmas and Easter and stuff like that too. Had a few missionaries in there, but it just was an amazing thing to walk through and to know that this is where a lot of the Gospels kind of were formed out of as well too. It's a beautiful book, and it's a beautiful book. And so what I thought we would do is, in our looking back, where we would normally look back just at this last week's sermon, maybe if we can, look back over a year and a half, which is a crazy large task to do.
Yeah.
But look back over a year and a half and not necessarily talk about specific principles, but actually maybe even just kind of personalize it for a minute and just say, okay, what was something that really stuck out to you through all of it? I know that's a tough question because you had to preach through all of it. So you had to literally jump in with both feet on a lot of these things in order to kind of not just read the passage through or retell it, but actually even to kind of chew on it and work through it. So I know that's a big ask, but can we just focus on that for a minute? What's even maybe one or two passages or even just one that man, that just struck me.
Yeah. Actually, you asked me this yesterday, and so I've been pondering it. And I kept coming back to one passage. And
see if it's the same as mine.
Okay.
Okay.
So, but before we go there, just an overview. Every passage was more than I expected.
Right.
Just who Jesus was is revealed by the passage, what he was about, what he did. So just overview, I just grew in love with Jesus through it. Right.
Jesus,
I've always wanted to love Jesus, but I felt like he drew me in this in a special way where I grew to love him more. And the fact that he is the exact embodiment of the Father, that he is who God is about.
Right.
So he was humble, right? And he was giving of himself, self-giving. That's who our God is, Father is, and so we have this amazing God, and so that's overview, and every passage is kind of revealed. He went to the hurting and the poor and the marginalized. He wasn't about fame and fortune. He was about love and care, concern. But anyways, the passage that really that I was drawn to was Mark 6:45 and following, where Jesus was praying for the disciples. He sent them ahead, and they were going through a storm, and he walked out to them on the lake. And as I studied that passage, and I talked about this, you can look it up, this passage. We talked about it June 5th, 2022.
Oh, wow.
So you can look it up if you want to remember. But as I studied the passage, it was Jesus, it seemed that Jesus was walking by them, and he was going to reveal his glory, like he had passed by Moses, on the mountain and stuff. And we talked about that on June 5th, that passage. And but the disciples were afraid and they cried out, and Jesus came in response to their cry. They were focused on what they wanted and everything, and they missed something.
Yeah.
And it just struck me. I don't want to miss him. I don't want to miss him. It's not that he gave up on them or anything. They didn't wreck the race, but they missed something, right? There was something that he was going to do. So I just realized I didn't want to miss him.
Yeah.
And so that just stood out. As I think back, the big question is, who do you say I am?
Yeah.
I recognize that he is God Almighty, that he is the Messiah, that he is So I recognize that, but I don't want to miss anything that he has planned for me.
Yeah.
And when I don't follow his plan, when I try to do my plan, I could be missing something, right? And so it's, that question is great. Who do you say I am? As we ponder that, if I say he's king, then what does that mean for me right now?
Yeah.
How am I living as if he's king, not me? How am I submitting to him, not myself?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to miss anything, like that just got to the motivation for me, like he's got so much to give.
And I think there's a reason even that Jesus like lived and walked around and just hung out with these guys, with these 12 people all day, every day for 3 years straight, right? Mm-hmm. That it has that idea of, okay, how does this all work out in everyday things, right? Mm-hmm. Those small ways, those little ways that I'm going to trust him and let him change me from the inside out. It's really easy if he was to like lob something from heaven, here, just follow this, and then I'll come back in a year and a half and see, how you're doing. It wasn't that. It was a continual walk through with him. Yeah. Yeah.
So what was your passage? Or
there's a couple that like it just kind of, the passages especially themselves, like obviously the crucifixion and resurrection, like even just to leave it with that question. The women went away afraid, and Joseph had this great faith, and yet it kind of just stops, right?
It ends so abruptly,
right? And so that was really interesting, and I love Easter, so always the reresurrection. It just it still boggles my mind. But a couple other things of like, okay, when Jesus healed the paralytic, who they lowered them through the roof, right? Like Jesus is talking about the Sabbath, and he heals this man's hand on the Sabbath, and right, all those things. It just really spoke to me, especially even growing up in a Christian home, and so that's why I actually was drawn to the end of Mark chapter 4, about 35 to 41, where Jesus calms the storm. So Jesus had been teaching all day, teaching parables, and not everybody was getting it, so he had to explain, in these small groups, but he would teach in parables. Everything he did was in parables. And then he said, okay, let's go for a boat ride. Let's go to the other side. And it says Jesus went as he was, or they took him as he was, right? Whatever that means, right? And then they get out there, and the storm arises, and there's these boats that are also around him too. It says there was other boats with him, even though he left the crowd, right? Maybe he was a little bit tired, he left the crowd. And there's these other boats around, and this storm comes up, and it's a question that the disciples throw out that really struck me, and it said, Lord, don't you care whether we die? And like, when we are at our absolute lowest and we feel like God is distant, God doesn't care, how could you, I see this situation in my life and I can't understand, to know that he actually is there. And not only that, like, so we've been recording for a little while. There was boats that came by. We said how beautiful and wonderful this morning thing is, and we've had to wait a few times because the waves have been a little bit high, right? Jesus says, peace, be still, and it says suddenly the wind and the waves stopped. Yeah. And I just want to know what that looks like, right? Because if it's this giant swell and it says,
I know. Right? Can you imagine being able to do that right now?
That would be mind-boggling. But it wasn't just the miracle. It was even the disciples' question of like, Lord, don't you care? Yeah. To know that our God is a God who cares. Yeah. And not only that, he takes it one step further and says, actually, because I am Lord of everything, watch this, peace, be still, so that your question actually matters. Yeah. Because if you even still had doubts, if I said, well, no, I do care, if you still had those doubts, it's like that miracle even speaks back to the question that you just asked. And it's like that connection point that in the midst of our doubts and fears, God is so there, and He proves that He's there.
He cares.
And He cares, and that should just keep reminding us when we get into those difficult circumstances, or fear for our lives, or even just sometimes I think we fear less about losing our life, and we fear finding more frustration in small things, right? Like a sore or a whatever, or a broken body part, or getting old, or whatever, fill in the blank. These small annoyances actually feel like they're bigger to us than those large things, and Jesus says, I'm actually in those small things too. And that really spoke to me, even just from growing up in a Christian home, that like he said, where's your faith? That just kind of spoke volumes to me, but I know that this book has been speaking to so many of you as well too, through all of this, and I think it's been a great experience for us, and I'm so glad that we've did it. We're going to move on to a different series now for a little bit. And you'll hear more about that on Sunday, and it's going to be an exciting experience, and we're looking forward to it.
It's interesting. We didn't have the same passage, but we were both about storms on the lake. It's kind of interesting. So we're gonna move into a next series, and then there's a couple things that are gonna happen. So we're gonna move into this next series, and it's gonna take us for a couple weeks. And right about that time, Pastor Chris is gonna be back. So if you're not aware, Pastor Chris is on a 2-month sabbatical to just go and to rest and to be focusing with God and working on that relationship and communion. So we sent him away for 2 months, and he's going to be back at the end of July, beginning of August. So that first week of August, he'll be back in the office, ready to go. And so you can be continuing to pray for them. If you follow them on social media or whatever, you've been kind of seeing some of his experiences, but some of their family experiences through all of this too. And I'm really looking forward to the stuff that he's going to share through all that. And then a couple weeks later, middle of August is drama camp. And so that's an exciting time. We get to even focus in on one of those passages that kind of talked to me. It's about this paralytic man who is healed, and the roof and the whole thing. So it's going to be really exciting, and so you can be praying for that. Preparations are happening, and sets are being built, and lots of kids are getting ready to come. They've got music, they've got stuff like that. But a lot of stuff doesn't happen until day one of camp. So we do some pre-work, some prep work, and then day one of camp, and then it's just this race to Friday. Friday night there's a performance for families, and then Sunday morning on August 20th is going to be a really exciting morning. So be looking forward to that. Be praying for that, and it's going to be exciting. And we're so glad to just be a part of your lives these days, and be a part of our gathering of people. And so we want to bless you on your way, and be praying for some of these things, and we'll talk to you soon.